Welcome to the Nurse Becoming podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Guarnieri from the Resume RX, and this is the podcast that's dedicated to empowering and encouraging nurses along your path of professional and self-discovery. As a nurse practitioner, mom, and business owner, I'm on a mission to help you figure out how to leave your lasting impact on the world, all while bravely and fearlessly growing along the way. Join me for honest conversations and inspiring stories about personal and professional growth, all through the lens of nursing. Hello. Welcome back to the Nurse Becoming podcast. It's your host, Amanda Guarnieri. Thank you so much for showing up for yourself today and listening to this episode and taking some time to learn something and listen to me. It is so nice to know that there are people on the other side of this microphone. Even if I can't see you, I am thinking about you and, as I record, as I outline these episodes. So I hope that this reaches you at the right time today. Because today we're going to talk about salary transparency. And I think that this will be a pretty short and sweet episode. I have things to say, but most of it is pretty straightforward, even though this can be kind of a hot topic. My opinion is pretty one-sided on this. I'm usually someone who can see all the sides of an argument and be very understanding. And for me and for this situation, I'm pretty one-sided on the topic of salary transparency. And I think for the most part, people have a pretty strong opinion either way on this topic. And this is certainly something that has evolved over the years, even as recent as 10 or so years ago when I graduated NP school. It was pretty taboo to discuss salary with others or even see a clear pay range when you were applying for a job. And today, I'll tell you a little bit about what I mean about transparency, salary transparency, what it means when I say that. We'll also talk about your rights when it comes to salary transparency and the benefits that I see of it. So spoiler alert, I am very much in favor of salary transparency. So let's dive in. Part of the reason why we're talking about this today is because I have a new thing that you can look at, and it's called the NP Salary Report, and it is live as of the release of this episode. And what it is essentially a crowdsourced database of real NP salaries. So when you go to the resumerx.com/salary, you'll see the option to input your information into the database, which will also grant you access to the database. And the database is cool because it's not just like an Excel spreadsheet of a bajillion salaries for you to sort through. It's something that you can sort and filter. And, there's a little tutorial video in there to show you the power of this database, but essentially you can set all these different parameters so that it shows you exactly what is relevant to you so that you're not just scrolling and interpreting it yourself. You really have the opportunity to narrow down, by state, by specialty, by years of experience, etc. And, this is a pretty new database. I'm obviously just announcing it, and behind the scenes, I have invited a select few students to input their information in here so that when you access it, there's something to look at, right? It's always hard to kind of start up something like this. So this is the type of thing where the longer that it's around, the better it will get, because it will be something that is kind of a living, breathing type of database. So I hope that it's helpful to you. Even if you're an NP student, you can still access it. But if you are practicing NP, I ask that you anonymously submit your information in order to gain access to make it the best that it can be. And you can get that at theresumerx.com/salary. By far, one of the most common questions I get is about nurse practitioner salary. What's typical? What's fair? What can I expect? There are so many variables, and while there are some reports that come out annually or every other year, I always wish there was a better way. So I created something. Introducing the free NP Salary Report. This is a database of real NP salaries from around the country that you can search and filter based on what you want to know. Now, keep in mind, this is a crowdsourced guide, so the more it gets shared, the better it gets. So I hope you will love it. I hope you will share it. Please check it out. Again, it's totally free at theresumérx.com/salary. Again, that's theresumérx.com/salary. Even if you're in a position you're not necessarily curious about what other people are making, I would really appreciate it if you would head to theresumérx.com/salary and at least submit your information anonymously. That's what generates the information in the salary report, is people submitting their salaries and also viewing the database. So I'm excited about this. It's a new project and I really hope that you will love it. Again, you can find it at theresumérx.com/salary. So let's start off. First of all, when I say salary transparency, I'm referring to a few things. First, I'm referring to companies being upfront and transparent about their pay range for a position in the job description itself. There are even places that legally require this. And actually, as of May 15, 2022, New York City employers, for example, who have 4 or more workers, are required to post the minimum and maximum pay in the actual job posting according to the pay transparency law. So there are definitely places that are catching on about this and not just, doing it because they want to, but some municipalities, they're doing it because they're required. So I think that's a step in the right direction. The other thing that I'm referring to when I say salary or pay transparency is the practice of discussing and disclosing salaries among colleagues and professionals and just making it less taboo to tell someone else how much money you make. This is definitely something that has kind of been one of those things that you don't talk about, right? You don't talk about money, you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about religion. But when it comes to pay and salary, there are so many gaps and disparities that happen because people aren't talking about it that we need to normalize this a little bit more. So this actually used to be something that employers could hold against you. Interestingly enough, discussing your pay with other employees at your employer. However, in the United States, at least per the U.S. Department of Labor, under Executive Order 11246, in case you're curious, you have the right to inquire about, discuss, or disclose your own pay or that of other employees or applicants. Okay, so this is a protection. You cannot be disciplined, harassed, demoted, terminated, denied employment, or otherwise discriminated or retaliated against because you exercised this right. So what that's saying is that you are free to ask your colleagues, especially those who are in the same role as you, what their salary is. So it still is kind of an uncomfortable conversation that you may or may not want to have, but just know that should you be having these conversations, it's not something that your employer can hold against you. And if they do, you basically have an employment discrimination situation on your hands. So for the most part, I think that this is a great movement, this movement towards more salary and pay transparency, the comfort and common practice of discussing pay and salary rates. And I have a few reasons that I want to share with you about why I think that this is great. So basically, 3 big benefits of talking about how much money we make as nurses or NPs. So first of all, it elevates the entire profession as we move towards earning our worth. Now, I'm going to talk specifically to the NPs here. It's no secret that there are some employers out there who are seriously underpaying nurse practitioners. And that's not to say, I don't want to say that there's not people underpaying nurses. That exists too. But as an NP, and when NPs are in revenue generating roles, meaning that the actions we take in our jobs directly generate revenue, there are some really shameful practices of employers who are really, really lowballing NPs. My landscapers just showed up and hopefully you can't hear the buzzing going on outside. How funny that always happens. Anyway, so like I said, it's no secret that there are some employers out there seriously underpaying nurse practitioners. And when we are all better informed, it means that we can appropriately negotiate. We can have realistic expectations, and we can start to elevate the baseline expectation salary for our role. The second benefit that I want to mention is that it's respectful of everyone's time. It takes time, effort, and often money or opportunity cost of money to apply for jobs and go on interviews. And it's the same for the employer. It's respectful of everyone's time to at least provide a general range of salary so that the applicant can decide whether or not to pursue the job opportunity. You may have a range where below this range, it's not even something you would consider, right? You have a minimum, you have some non-negotiables. And certainly there are things that can be discussed inside of an offer, but if there's something that you see is so far lower than what you would even entertain, then, is it even worth your time to go on this interview? Maybe not. And it's respectful for you to be given the opportunity to make that decision. Now, the third benefit that I think is really important to emphasize is that it helps reduce the race and gender wage gaps. This is a serious problem in our country. It has been for many, many years, and we cannot rely on the system to fix this for us. Okay, this is a systemic issue, and while yes, there are some systemic solutions, we have the opportunity to help push this forward, I think, by bringing more awareness to the situation and opening up these conversations. Those in marginalized groups when it comes to pay, namely women or non-men, and particularly Black, Indigenous, and people of color, can only advocate for themselves when they have the tools to know when there's a problem. So those are the three benefits that I think come with opening up this conversation about pay and salary transparency. It elevates the entire profession as we move towards earning our worth. It's respectful of your time, especially if you have an area of non-negotiable, and it helps reduce the race and gender wage gaps. I'd love to know your thoughts on pay transparency. Are you for it? Are you against it? Are there major drawbacks that I didn't consider? I would love for us to have this conversation. If this resonated with you, give me a shout out on Instagram. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm at the Resume RX. And if you are an NP or an NP student, please access and contribute to my free NP salary report. Like I said, it's a crowdsourced database of real NP salaries. And the more people who contribute and access it, the better it gets. And I would be so appreciative of your help with this project. I really want to make it the best that it can be and have it be kind of a go-to database for NPs who are trying to figure out what they should ask for and find out what other people are making in the profession. And again, you can find that at theresumerx.com/salary. Again, like I promised, short and sweet episode. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you again for spending this time with me and really showing up for yourself, because really this information is about you and about elevating your experience as a professional so that you can continue to go on and do the good work. So grateful for you, and thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next week. Well, that does it for today. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. If you have found today's episode helpful and you would like to support the Nurse Becoming podcast, I invite you to buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/nursebecoming. I appreciate your support. This helps me create more content for you to enjoy and benefit from in the future. Also, would you consider giving me a rating or review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't done so already? It will truly help other nurses find the show and know that it's worth listening to. For more information about this episode, as well as a place to submit your questions or suggestions for future episodes or guests, head to nursebecoming.com. I can't wait to connect with you soon, and until next time, remember, I am always rooting for you.